Daniel stood in the great chamber of the Interstellar Council, surrounded by banners of different worlds. He was a soldier, not a diplomat. Yet here he was, dressed in ceremonial armor polished until it shone like silver. His hands felt stiff. Inside the gloves, and though he had faced battles before, this moment carried a different weight. The leaders of humanity had chosen him for something he never imagined, an alliance marriage with an alien princess. The Valari delegation entered, with quiet grace. They were tall, elegant beings, their pale skin marked with glowing lines that shimmered softly like starlight. Their eyes reflected faint shades of blue and gold, as though holding galaxies within. To Daniel they seemed both beautiful and strange, like living statues carved from light. At the center of their group walked Princess Alira, draped in flowing silver robes that shifted colors when she moved. The chamber grew silent as she stepped forward. She was young, yet carried herself with dignity that made even the council members bow slightly. Daniel had expected her to look at him with cold detachment, as someone forced into duty. Instead, when her eyes met his, he froze. Alira's gaze lingered on him longer than it should have. Her glowing markings brightened as though reacting to his presence. She stopped only a few steps away and studied him with an expression that was not surprise but recognition. And then she spoke. "I know you." The words were in flawless human language, clear and steady, echoing through the chamber. Gasps rose, from both human and Valari sides. The translators, who had been ready to interpret her speech, stared in confusion, their devices unneeded. Daniel felt the weight of her words press against him. How could she know him? He had never seen her before in his life. Yet her tone carried certainty, as if she was not guessing but stating a truth she had carried for years. The council leader, an older human named Marshall Reed, cleared his throat. "Princess, do you mean you know of him, his records and service?" Alira did not look away from Daniel. "No, I know him. I have seen him before." The hall fell into whispers. The Valari elders exchanged tense glances, their glowing markings dimming with unease. Some of the human officers leaned toward each other, murmuring doubts. Daniel stood frozen, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. Finally, he forced himself to step forward and bow respectfully. "Princess, I am honored to meet you, but I believe we have never spoken before." Alira tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing as though she was peering not at his face but at something deeper. "You may not remember, but I do." Before anyone could press her further, the council moved on with the ceremony. The purpose of this gathering was to bind humanity and the Valari through a sacred union. Enemies watched from the shadows of space, waiting for weakness. This marriage was not only a bond between two people, but a shield for both civilizations. Daniel and Alira were led to a raised platform where an elder from each side recited words of unity. Daniel repeated his lines carefully, promising loyalty, protection, and respect. His voice was steady, though his mind kept circling back to her strange greeting. When Alira spoke her vows, her voice carried a calm strength. She did not hesitate, but when she said she would trust him, her eyes never left his. When the ceremony ended, the hall erupted with applause. Yet beneath the clapping, Daniel could sense tension. Some humans looked at him with pride, others with envy. Among the Valari, a few smiled politely, but many kept their expressions cold. It was clear that not everyone supported this union. After the gathering, Daniel was escorted to a private chamber to meet Alira properly. The room was quiet, lit by gentle blue lights that reflected off crystal walls. Alira entered alone, without her guards. Daniel stood at attention, unsure whether to speak first. She broke the silence. "You think I am mistaken, but I am not." Daniel studied her carefully. "Princess, With respect, I truly do not understand. How could you know me? Alira stepped closer, her markings glowing faintly brighter. Since I was a child, I saw visions. Not dreams, not illusions, but moments from paths yet to come. In every vision of danger, of choice, of survival, you were there, always standing beside me, always the one I trusted. Daniel's breath caught. He had heard rumors of Valari abilities, strange connections to starlight and energy, but visions of the future that was beyond belief. I thought they were only fragments, Alira continued softly. Yet when I saw you today, I knew. The visions were true. You are the one I saw. Daniel shook his head slightly, trying to ground himself. I am only a soldier, chosen because I follow orders. I do not see how I could appear in your visions. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, her formal tone faded into something personal. Maybe it is not about orders. Maybe it is about who you are. The words unsettled him. Soldiers were not meant to think about destiny or fate. They followed commands, completed missions, and carried burdens without question. But as Alira stood before him, speaking with certainty, he felt the walls of logic bend. A chime sounded, signaling the arrival of attendants. The moment ended, and Alira stepped back, her expression returning to calm formality. We will face many tests ahead, Daniel. Remember my words. You are not here by chance. Daniel bowed, though his thoughts swirled with doubt. He had entered the chamber as a soldier on duty, bound to a political alliance. He left it carrying a mystery that pressed heavier than any armor. That night, as the human delegation prepared quarters within the Valari palace, Daniel lay awake. He replayed the moment again and again, the glow in her eyes, the certainty in her voice, the strange pull he felt when she said she knew him. The galaxy was full of dangers, pirate fleets, hostile empires, hidden plots. He expected to fight, them with weapons and strategy. Yet now, it seemed his greatest challenge would not be an enemy fleet, but the meaning of one alien princess's words. Alira had spoken with a calm that could not be faked. She believed their fates were tied together, and though Daniel wanted to dismiss it as impossible, a small part of him whispered that maybe, just maybe, she was right. The first step of their union had been made. The galaxy watched, and Daniel could not shake the feeling that his life had just shifted onto a path that was no longer his own choosing. The first days after the union were filled with formal duties. Banquets, speeches, and endless greetings from nobles and officers of both species filled Daniel's schedule. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him. Some looked at him with respect, others with doubt, and a few with open hostility. Daniel endured it quietly, remembering his duty as a soldier. But beneath all the ceremony, one thought never left him. The princess's words. I know you. Daniel spent much of the time walking beside Alira, always under the watch of guards and council members. She walked gracefully, her silver robes flowing like water, her glowing markings shifting as if alive. To the nobles, she spoke politely, but with Daniel, her manner was different. She did not treat him as a stranger, though they had just met. She looked at him as if she already knew what he would say before he spoke. One evening, after another long banquet, Daniel was allowed to return to his assigned chambers. The palace was vast, made of crystal walls and floating lanterns that shone with soft light. As he entered his quarters, he was surprised to see Alira waiting for him. 2 Valari guards stood outside, but inside it was only the 2 of them. I hope I am not intruding, she said gently. Daniel bowed slightly. Princess, you honor me. But why are you here? Alira stepped closer, her gaze calm and steady. Because I must speak with you without the ears of the council. There are things they will not understand, but you must. Daniel straightened. unsure what she meant. "I am listening." She paused before answering. "You do not believe me when I say I know you. I see the doubt in your eyes. But I will tell you more. Since I was young, I dreamed of fire in the sky, of battles across stars, of shadows rising against my people. Always, you were there. You stood between me and danger. You lifted me when I fell. You were not only a soldier in those visions, you were the one who stayed." Her words settled heavily in the room. Daniel wanted to argue, to call it impossible, but the certainty in her voice shook him. He had faced many lies in his life and could usually sense when someone was speaking falsely. Yet Alira's tone carried no deception. "Visions are not proof," Daniel said carefully. "I cannot explain what you saw, but I am only a man. I did not live your past, and I have no power over the future." Alira studied him, her glowing lines shifting softly across her skin. "Perhaps you do not see it yet, but I feel it. Even now I know what you will do before you move. You are cautious, loyal, and stubborn, just as I saw. You are exactly the one I expected." Daniel tried to hide his unease. He was a soldier trained to control his thoughts, but her words struck, deeper than he wished to admit. She was right. He was cautious, and he was loyal. He had lived his whole life following orders, protecting others before himself. How could she know him so well? Alira stepped even closer, her eyes shining faintly in the light. "There is more. I sense danger here. Not from you, not from your people, but from within my own court. I am not safe among them. That is why you are here. You are not only my husband by alliance, you are my shield." Daniel frowned. "Danger from your own court." "Yes," she whispered. "There are those who do not want this union. They fear that joining with humanity will weaken us. Some want me removed. If they succeed, the alliance will fall, and war will come. That is why my visions showed you. You are the one who can stand beside me when no one else will." The thought of treachery within her people unsettled Daniel. He had expected resistance, but not threats to her life. He looked at her closely. "Why tell me this now? Why not your council elders?" "Because I cannot trust them all," she answered firmly. "But I trust you. Even if you doubt me, I know your heart. You will not let me fall." Her words pulled at him in a way no command ever had. For years he had followed orders because it was his duty. Now she was asking him to protect her not as a soldier to a commander, but as one person to another. It felt heavier than any oath he had sworn. Before Daniel could respond, a sharp knock came at the chamber door. The Valeri guard entered, bowing. "Princess, the council requests your presence. Urgent matters." Alira straightened, her calm expression returning. She gave Daniel a last look, her voice low. "Remember what I told you. Watch carefully. Do not trust every smile you see." With that, she left the chamber, the guards closing the door behind her. Daniel remained still, her words echoing in his mind. Later that night, Daniel walked the palace halls alone. He observed the Valeri nobles as they moved through corridors lined with glowing crystals. Some nodded politely when they saw him, but others turned away, their markings dimming with cold disapproval. He noticed how a few spoke in hushed tones when he passed, their eyes sharp with suspicion. The whispers of discontent were real. Alira had not exaggerated. There was resistance here, hidden behind polite words and ceremonial bows. Daniel's soldier instincts stirred. He had been trained to sense threats, and here in the Grand Palace, he felt it, a quiet tension, like the air before a storm. When he returned to his quarters, he found himself unable to rest. He thought about Alira's visions. If what she said was true, then his role was greater than that of a political pawn. He was meant to be her shield, her ally in the storms ahead. But how could he protect her from enemies hidden within her own people? Daniel clenched his hands, a soldier's resolve filling him. Whatever came, he would not let her fall. Whether her visions were fate or chance, he would stand by her. She believed in him, and that belief demanded an answer. That night he stood by the window of his chamber, looking out at the alien city beyond. Towers of crystal rose into the sky, glowing faintly under the stars. Somewhere in that vast city, Alira was resting, trusting him with her life. Daniel's heart tightened. He had not chosen this union, yet he could no longer see it as mere duty. For the first time, Daniel felt that his path was not only his own. And though he still did not understand the mystery of her words, he could not deny the truth that was growing between them, a connection that was no accident, a bond that was already shaping the future of both their worlds. The palace of the Valari stood like a jewel under the light of 3 moons. Its towers glowed with soft energy, and its bridges stretched between crystal spires. From the outside, it looked peaceful, but Daniel had begun to feel the hidden unrest beneath its beauty. Everywhere he walked, whispers followed him. The Valari nobles bowed politely in public, but their glowing markings dimmed whenever their eyes rested on him. Some looked at him as if he were an intruder in their sacred halls. To them, he was not a partner in peace, but a stranger forced upon their princess. At council gatherings, the tension was even clearer. The human delegation sat opposite the Valari leaders in a grand chamber shaped like a star. They discussed trade, defense, and the new bond between their people, but Daniel noticed how often the Valari elders spoke with cold voices. They praised the union in words, yet their faces showed little warmth. Marshal Reed, the head of the human delegation, leaned toward Daniel during one session and whispered, "Do not be fooled by their courtesy. They tolerate us for now, but many of them see you as a mistake." Daniel did not answer, but he felt the truth in the marshal's words. Alira, however, never wavered. At every meeting, she spoke with calm authority, her voice strong but measured. She defended the Union, reminding both sides that their bond was not only political but necessary for survival. "The galaxy grows darker," she said in one session. "Enemies gather beyond the rim. Alone, we are vulnerable. Together, we stand stronger." Her words carried power, yet Daniel saw how some Valari nobles exchanged cold glances after she spoke. Their silence spoke louder than words. After the meeting ended, Daniel walked with Alira along a quiet balcony that overlooked the glowing city below. The air was cool, carrying the faint hum of energy from the crystal towers. "They do not trust me," Daniel said quietly. Alira looked at him, her silver robe swaying in the night wind. "They do not trust change. My people guard traditions with stubborn hearts. To them, joining with humanity is like opening a gate to the unknown, and many fear the unknown." Daniel folded his arms. "If they cannot trust me, how can I protect you? They may see me as an enemy instead of your husband." Alira's eyes softened. "Do not mistake their fear for strength. The voices against us are loud, but not all Valari share their doubts. Some believe in this union, though they remain quiet for now. What matters most is that I trust you." Her words eased him more than he expected. Yet he knew trust alone would not silence the whispers. That night, a feast was held in the Hall of Stars, a chamber with walls that shone like the night sky. Long tables of crystal stretched across the floor, and music echoed from instruments that produced notes like falling water. Human officers and Valari nobles sat side by side, though the distance between them felt greater than the width of the tables. Daniel sat at Alira's side, eating little as he watched the room. He noticed the sharp glances from some nobles, the hushed conversations that stopped when he turned his head. A group of young Valari officers laughed loudly at one end of the hall, their voices carrying a mocking tone. Though Daniel could not understand every word, he knew they were speaking about him. One of them, tall and proud, finally raised his cup and called out, "To the human soldier who thinks himself worthy of our princess." His smile was thin, his markings glowing with defiance. The hall grew tense. Some laughed politely, others frowned, but no one stopped him. Daniel kept his composure. He had been trained to withstand provocation. Yet before he could respond, Alira rose to her feet. Her voice cut through the hall like a blade. "He is not only worthy," she declared. "He is my chosen. The council may call this marriage an alliance, but I tell you this. If Daniel were not the one I trusted, no council in the galaxy could have forced me to stand here today." The hall fell silent. The mocking officer's smile vanished. "Even," the elders shifted uncomfortably. Alira's words had carried not only defense, but defiance, challenging anyone to question her openly. Daniel felt a rush of surprise and respect. She had spoken with a strength that no one could ignore, yet he also knew that such a bold declaration would not end the whispers. It might even make the opposition stronger. After the feast, as they returned to their private chambers, Daniel finally spoke. "You did not need to defend me like that. It may cause more trouble." Alira looked at him calmly. "Trouble will come whether we hide or not. It is better they see my choice clearly. If they strike at you, they strike at me as well." Her loyalty struck Daniel deeply. He had expected formality in this marriage, perhaps even cold distance. Instead, Alira stood beside him with conviction. It was no longer only about duty. Something stronger was forming between them, though he could not yet name it. In the following days, Daniel remained alert. He noticed subtle changes in the palace. Guards sometimes shifted positions strangely. Certain nobles avoided Alira more openly. Even among the human officers, whispers began to grow. Some envied him, saying he had been given a role beyond his worth. Others suspected the Valari might use him as a pawn, a human husband to manipulate. Daniel began to feel the weight of isolation. He was caught between two worlds, mistrusted by many in both. Yet when Alira looked at him, he found strength. She never wavered, and her calm confidence spread to him. One evening, as they walked together in the palace gardens, Alira suddenly stopped. Her glowing markings brightened, and her eyes grew distant, as if she were listening to something far away. "What is it?" Daniel asked. She turned to him, her face grave. "Danger is closer than I thought. Soon they will test us. Be ready." Daniel felt his hand tighten on the hilt of the ceremonial blade at his side. He had known tension was rising, but now it was no longer whispers in the shadows. Something was coming, and Alira had already sensed it. The alliance between humanity and the Valari was fragile, balanced on a knife's edge. Daniel knew that one attack, one betrayal, could shatter everything. He stood beside Alira in the glowing garden, the scent of alien flowers heavy in the air, and made a silent vow. Whatever test awaited them, he would not let her stand alone. The Hall of Unity shimmered with crystal light as the feast began. It was meant to be a celebration of the new bond between humanity and the Valari, a symbol that their union was strong. The long tables were filled with shining plates of alien, fruits, glowing drinks, and rare dishes shared between both peoples. Music flowed from the far end of the chamber, soft and melodic, played on Valari instruments that shimmered with every note. Daniel sat at Alira's side, his senses sharp. He had not relaxed since the night of the last feast, when whispers and open insults revealed the tension beneath the polished surface. Tonight, the atmosphere felt heavier still. Though many smiled, the smiles were thin, forced. The Valari nobles wore robes of silver and blue, their glowing markings bright with ceremony, but Daniel could see their eyes drifting toward him with suspicion. Even some humans shifted uneasily in their seats, as though unsure of their place in this palace of crystal and starlight. Alira, however, sat calmly. Her presence was steady, her voice polite as she greeted each noble who came to her table. She looked every bit the princess, yet Daniel could feel her attention flicker beyond the surface. She was watching, just as he was. The first sign of trouble came when the crystal lamps flickered. At first it seemed like nothing more than a shift in power, but then the music stopped. The musicians lowered their instruments, uncertain, while a cold silence spread across the hall. Daniel's instincts screamed. His hand moved to the hilt of his ceremonial blade. He scanned the room quickly. Guards at the doors stood stiff, but their eyes darted nervously. Alira's markings brightened suddenly, glowing across her skin as if warning her of what was coming. Then the attack began. The windows of the hall shattered with a sharp crack, and dark figures burst inside. They were cloaked in black armor that reflected no light, their movements fast and precise. Blades and strange energy weapons gleamed in their hands. The guests screamed, some diving under the tables, others rushing for the exits. The Valari guards moved to intercept, but the attackers were faster, cutting through the first line with brutal efficiency. Daniel was already moving. He rose from the table, pulling Alira close as an energy bolt streaked past where she had been, sitting. He shoved her behind a pillar, drawing his blade. The weapon was ceremonial but sharp enough to serve in combat. "Stay behind me," he commanded. Alira shook her head, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. "No, we fight together." Before he could argue, she lifted her hands. The glowing markings across her arms pulsed, and streams of light shot forward, striking one of the attackers and sending him crashing against the far wall. Daniel stared for half a heartbeat. It was the first time he had seen her power in battle, and it was nothing short of breathtaking. There was no time to marvel. Two more attackers rushed toward them. Daniel stepped forward, meeting the first with a swift strike of his blade. The armored figure parried, their weapons clashing in sparks. But Daniel's strength drove the attacker back. He turned quickly, blocking the second before the blade could reach Alira. With a sharp twist, he disarmed the assailant and struck him down. All around them, the hall had erupted into chaos. Nobles screamed and scattered. Human officers drew their sidearms, firing into the attackers, while Valari guards fought with glowing spears. But the attackers were skilled, their formation tight, their goal clear. They were not here for the guests. They were here for Alira. One of the cloaked figures shouted in a strange dialect. At once, half the attackers shifted their focus, cutting. Through the guards and pushing toward the pillar where Alira stood, Daniel saw it instantly. "They want you," he growled. Alira's eyes narrowed. "Then they will fail." Together they fought. Alira's light flared, striking out in bursts that blinded and staggered her enemies. Daniel moved with practiced precision, his blade flashing as he cut down any who slipped past her defenses. For every attacker they stopped, more pressed forward. Daniel's arms ached, but he did not retreat. He remembered her words, visions of fire and danger, and always him standing at her side. Now that vision was real. A heavy crash shook the hall as another squad of attackers forced open the great doors. They poured in, overwhelming the defenders. Daniel's heart pounded. They could not hold forever. "Alira, we have to move," he said, pulling her close. "If they surround us, it's over." She nodded, her eyes sharp. "Follow me." She raised her hands again, and the markings across her body flared brighter than ever. A wave of energy surged outward, striking the floor and walls. The attackers were thrown back, their weapons scattering. For a moment, the path ahead was clear. Daniel grabbed her hand, and together they ran, weaving through the panicked crowd and fighting off any who blocked their way. Blasts of energy streaked past them, but Alira's power shielded them, deflecting bolts with arcs of glowing light. Daniel struck down another enemy, his blade cutting through their armor before pulling Alira through a side passage. The two raced down a corridor lined with crystal windows. Behind them, the sounds of battle echoed, the clash of blades, the shouts of soldiers, the cries of the wounded. Daniel's mind was focused on one thought: keeping her alive. Finally, they reached a smaller chamber, its door sliding shut behind them. Daniel leaned against the wall, breathing hard. His armor was scorched, his blade stained, but his eyes were steady. Alira's markings dimmed slowly as she lowered her hands, her breathing heavy but controlled. She looked at Daniel, her voice quiet but certain. "Just as I saw it. You stood by me. You fought without fear." Daniel wiped his blade clean, shaking his head. "Fear was there. I just could not let it stop me." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Outside, the sounds of battle continued. But here the two stood, alone. Daniel looked at her, remembering the moment she had spoken her first words to him. "I know you." Now he began to understand. Her visions had not been empty. She had seen him in this moment, standing between her and death. Alira stepped closer, her glowing eyes fixed on his. "This is only the beginning. More will come. But together, we will endure." Daniel nodded. He did not know what future awaited them, but he knew one thing with certainty: he would not leave her side. As the echoes of the attack rolled through the palace, Daniel tightened his grip on his blade and prepared for the storm that was yet to come. The palace lay in ruins of silence after the attack. Broken crystal walls glimmered faintly under the moonlight. Guards carried the injured away, and healers moved quickly from one wounded soldier to the next. The air smelled of smoke and scorched stone. Daniel stood near the shattered Hall of Unity, his blade still at his side. His armor was marked with burns and cuts, reminders of how close the night had come to disaster. Around him, human officers spoke in hushed tones, while nobles whispered to one another. Many cast sharp glances at Alira, as if blaming her for what had happened. But Alira did not bend under their stares. She stood tall, her glowing markings dim but steady, her silver robe torn from battle, yet worn with dignity. When the council questioned her, she answered with calm strength. "The attackers came for me, not for the alliance. Their goal was my removal, not your destruction. That should tell us where the true danger lies." Her words silenced the chamber for a moment, but Daniel saw the truth in her eyes. She already knew more than she said aloud. Later, when the council dismissed them, Alira led Daniel through the quieter halls of the palace, away from guards and ears. They walked until they reached a secluded chamber filled with glowing crystals, their light soft and warm. Here, she finally spoke the words she had held back. "The attack was not the work of outsiders," she said. "It came from within." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You are certain?" "Yes," she replied. "Their weapons were forged with Valeri steel. Their movements carried the training of our soldiers. No raiders or mercenaries could have entered the palace with such precision. These were my people." Daniel's hands curled into fists. "Then it is treachery. Someone inside your court wants you dead." Alira nodded slowly. "I have long suspected it. My visions showed me shadows rising from within, not from the stars. Beyond. Tonight proved it." Daniel frowned. "Why not tell the council directly if you know the truth? Should they not act?" Her gaze was sharp. "Because some among the council are part of it. If I accuse them without proof, they will turn suspicion back on us. Already some whisper that humanity brought this attack to weaken us. If I speak wrongly, the alliance will fall before it begins." Daniel understood her caution, though it burned against his soldier's instinct. In battle, one struck quickly before the enemy could strike again. But this was not a battlefield where blades alone decided victory. This was a war of secrets, and Alira carried the burden of knowing too much. They stood in silence for a moment, before Daniel asked quietly, "Why me? Why was I in your visions?" Alira's expression softened. She walked closer, her glowing eyes fixed on his. "I will tell you what few know. Before I was born, the Valari sought to see beyond the veil of time. Our scholars used crystals of starlight, powerful and dangerous. Most of them failed, their visions breaking their minds. But when I was a child, I began to see fragments on my own. Not of the far future, not of distant centuries, but of moments that would shape my path. In every vision, you were there." Daniel stared at her. "You mean since you were a child, you saw me a human soldier who had not even been chosen yet?" "Yes," Alira whispered. "You stood beside me in halls of fire. You shielded me from blades. You held me when the shadows closed in. I did not know your name, nor your world, only your face." "That is why, when we first met, I said I knew you." Daniel's chest tightened. It was a truth too heavy to dismiss, yet too strange to accept easily. He wanted to deny it, to claim it was impossible, but her voice carried the weight of conviction. "Why? Tell me this now," he asked. "Because after tonight," she said firmly, "you deserve to know why I trust you above all others. My people will betray me. Some humans will question you. But you must remember, this path is not chance. We were always meant to stand together." Her words stirred something deep within him. For years, Daniel had thought of himself as a soldier without choice, following orders because duty demanded it. Now Alira was telling him his life carried purpose beyond command. He was not only a protector by assignment, but by destiny. Their moment was broken by a sudden knock at the chamber door. A young human officer stepped inside, saluting. "Sir, Princess, the council requests your presence again. There are questions about your actions during the attack." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Questions?" The officer nodded uncomfortably. "Some nobles claim the attack began near the human tables. They imply it may not have been coincidence." Alira's eyes hardened. "So they move already." Daniel's jaw clenched. He wanted to storm into the council and silence the accusations with steel. But he knew Alira's wisdom was right. To act with anger now would only prove their enemies' claims. "Let us go," she said, her voice calm, though her markings glowed faintly brighter. "We must face their doubts with strength." The council chamber was filled with tension when they entered. Nobles whispered on both sides, some glaring at Daniel as though he were guilty already. One Valari elder rose, his robe flowing like water, his voice sharp. "Princess, your new husband fought with great force during the attack. Yet it is strange that the attackers appeared near his people. How do we know humanity was not behind this, seeking to gain favor through false heroics?" Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some humans shouted in protest, others sat stone-faced, their honor questioned. Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady. "I fought because my duty is to protect. I would give my life for this alliance and for the princess. Anyone who says otherwise is a coward hiding behind words." The elder sneered. "Strong words, human, but words are not proof." Before the argument could grow, Alira raised her hand. Her voice rang clear, silencing the chamber. "Enough. I will not allow falsehoods to stain this bond. The attackers were trained in our ways. Their weapons bore our craft. Blame does not lie with humanity. It lies within our own ranks." Her boldness struck the chamber silent. The elder faltered, his markings dimming in unease. Slowly, other council members shifted, uncertain now of their accusations. Daniel looked at her with quiet admiration. She had not only defended him, but spoken a truth that risked turning her own people against her. She had chosen honesty over safety. When the council dismissed them, Daniel walked beside Alira once more. She looked tired, the glow of her markings, faint, but her eyes still carried strength. "You risked much by speaking so openly," Daniel said quietly. "I risk more if I remain silent," she answered. "Secrets can kill faster than blades. At least now, they know I see the truth." Daniel nodded. "Then we face it together." For the first time, Alira allowed herself a small smile. Yes, together, as it was always meant to be. Outside, the chamber, the moons hung over the city, casting silver light across the broken palace. The wounds of the attack had not yet healed, but in the shadows of betrayal, a stronger bond was forming. Daniel could feel it. Their fight was no longer for survival alone. It was for the future of both their worlds. The days after the council meeting grew darker. Whispers of blame spread like smoke through the palace halls. Some Valerie nobles accused humanity of plotting in secret, while some humans muttered that the Valari could not be trusted. Every meal in the grand hall felt like sitting on the edge of a knife. Daniel walked through the city with his guard unit, watching the tension in the streets. Human soldiers marched side by side with Valari warriors, but their eyes no longer held trust. Every sound of steel echoed like a warning. Alira moved carefully through these days, speaking to her people with calm words, standing tall in every public gathering. Yet in private, her glow dimmed with worry. Daniel noticed it whenever she thought. No one was watching. One evening, as the two of them stood on a high balcony overlooking the city lights, Daniel finally asked, "You are afraid, not of the enemy, but of your own council." Alira did not deny it. "Yes, there are names I dare not speak. If I call them traitors, they will strike before I am ready. If I stay silent, they will spread their poison in shadows. Both choices carry danger." Daniel rested his hand on the rail. "Then we must find proof. If they hide in shadows, we drag them into the light." Her gaze met his, steady and sharp. "That is why I need you. My people cannot be trusted, not all of them, but you. Your loyalty is clear. Together, we can uncover them." The chance came sooner than they expected. 2 nights later, alarms rang across the palace. The sky lit with fire as enemy ships broke through the defense ring. The attackers were swift and precise, striking not at the city, but directly at the palace gates. Daniel led his unit to the front lines, blade flashing as enemy soldiers poured into the courtyards. But as he fought, he noticed something strange. The enemy moved, with knowledge of every gate, every hidden path. They avoided traps only palace guards should have known about. Daniel's stomach twisted. This was no outside invasion. It was a betrayal. Through the smoke and chaos, Daniel cut down one of the attackers. When the soldier's mask fell, Daniel froze. The face beneath was not an alien raider, but a Valari guard he had seen standing in the council chamber days before. The truth struck him like a blade to the chest. The enemy was not only at the gates, they were already inside. Daniel shouted to his men, "Hold the line! They are traitors, not outsiders. Do not let them reach the princess." He cut his way back toward the inner hall, where Alira stood directing defenders. Her silver robe was torn, her markings bright as stars as she called out, "Orders," her voice carrying above the battle. Daniel reached her side, his armor stained with ash. "They know every path," he told her. "This is no raid. It is the council's doing." Her eyes narrowed, glowing with fury. "Then it is as I feared. They mean to seize power by removing me." The fighting grew worse as flames spread through the palace. Stone cracked, banners burned, and the great crystal spires shattered. Daniel shielded Alira as arrows of light rained down. In the chaos, a group of armored traitors broke through, their leader carrying a blade of black crystal. His voice rang cold across the hall. The princess is no longer fit to rule. Step aside, human. This is not your fight. Daniel stood firm, sword raised. She is my fight. She always was. The clash was brutal. Daniel met the black blade, with steel sparks flying as each strike shook the hall. Around them, loyal soldiers battled traitors in desperate combat. Alira unleashed waves of crystal light, her power pushing enemies back, but each attack drained her strength. The traitor, leader sneered as he pressed Daniel hard. Why fight for her? You are not of her blood. You are nothing to her world. Daniel's voice thundered as he struck back. Because I made a vow. Because she is not only your princess, she is my future. With a roar, Daniel drove his blade forward, knocking the black crystal sword from the traitor's hand. Alira raised her arm, her markings blazing, and struck him down with a surge of light. The hall shook as the leader fell, defeated. But the battle was far from over. More traitors poured in, their numbers greater than expected. The defenders were pushed back step by step. Alira leaned close to Daniel, her voice urgent. We cannot hold the palace. If we stay, we die. We must lead the loyalists to safety. Daniel wanted to argue, but he saw the truth. Survival was the only choice. He called out to the defenders. Fall back! Protect the princess! We make for the city! Gates! Through fire and blood they fought their way out, Daniel cutting a path with his sword while Alira shielded them with bursts of crystal light. The palace walls crumbled behind them, the proud heart of Valari power now a battlefield. At last they reached the outer city, where civilians watched in horror as flames rose from the palace towers. Alira stood before them, her robe torn, her face marked with battle. Yet her voice was strong. My people, she cried, do not fear. The traitors think they can break us, but we are not broken. Tonight we bleed, but tomorrow we rise. With humanity beside us, we will take back our home. Her words lit fire in the hearts of her people. Cheers rose from the crowd, even as smoke choked the air. Daniel stood at her side, bloodied but unbroken, his presence a symbol that the bond between their worlds still lived. As the night fell, into uneasy silence, Daniel and Alira gathered with their remaining loyalists. The city was theirs, but the palace was lost. War had begun, and the enemy wore the face of family. Daniel looked at Alira as they planned their next move. This fight will not be short, it will not be clean, but we will win. Alira met his gaze, her glow steady once more. Yes, because we stand together, and together we are stronger than their shadows. The night stretched long, filled with the cries of the wounded and the glow of burning towers. Yet in the darkness, a new resolve was born. Humanity and Valari had been tested by betrayal, and now, united by war, they would march forward into the storm. Dawn broke over the city, painting the shattered palace and streets with pale light. Smoke still rose from the towers, curling into the sky like black ribbons. The aftermath of the betrayal and attack left the city wounded, but not defeated. Alira and Daniel moved among the defenders, rallying them for the coming battle. Daniel's armor was dented and scorched from the previous night, but he held his blade firmly. His eyes scanned the horizon, watching for signs of the traitors. Alira walked beside him, her markings glowing softly in the early light, a symbol of hope for the loyalists. The traitors will come again, Daniel said quietly. They know we are weak after last night. We must be ready. Alira nodded. I know. That is why we hold our ground here, where we have the advantage. The streets are narrow, the bridges strong, and we have loyal soldiers who will fight to the last. But it will be dangerous. Daniel gripped her hand for a moment, a silent promise passing between them. We face this together. By mid-morning, the traitor forces appeared beyond the city walls. Their black armor gleamed in the sunlight, and their formations were precise, trained by Valari tactics. But Daniel and Alira were ready. Barricades had been set, and loyal soldiers lined the streets, their weapons poised. As the enemy approached, Alira stepped forward. Her voice carried across the courtyard. "Valerie, humans, stand firm. These are not outsiders. They are shadows of our own making, but we will not fall to them. Today, we fight for our home, our families, and our future." The defenders cheered, their spirits lifted by her words. Daniel felt a surge of pride. Alira had not only survived the betrayal, but she had turned it into strength. The first clash was sudden. Black-armored soldiers rushed forward, striking at barricades. Arrows of light flew, energy blasts lit the streets, and swords met with the sound of metal on metal. Daniel moved with precision, cutting down attackers as he shielded Alira from danger. She responded with bursts of crystal light, her power pushing enemies back and giving their allies room to fight. Despite the defenders' courage, the traitors were strong and determined. They had knowledge of every path and every weak point. Daniel realized quickly that brute force alone would not win this battle. Strategy was essential. He turned to Alira. "We need to split their forces, draw them into the narrow streets where their numbers won't help." Alira's eyes glowed brightly. "I can create barriers of light to funnel them. It will give our soldiers the advantage." Together, they moved through the city streets, Alira's energy creating walls of light that redirected the enemy into tight corridors. Daniel led small teams of soldiers in surprise attacks, striking quickly before moving back behind the barriers. Slowly, the tide began to turn, but the traitor leader remained a figure in black crystal armor. He advanced through the battlefield, cutting down anyone in his path, seeking Alira directly. Daniel noticed him and moved to intercept. "You again?" Daniel growled, stepping in front of her. The leader laughed, a cold sound that echoed through the streets. "You cannot stop me, human. She belongs to no one. Today, we claim what is ours." Daniel tightened his grip on his blade. "Not if I can help it." Their battle was fierce. Blades clashed with sparks, energy arcs flew past them, and every strike carried the weight of survival. Daniel fought with skill and determination, pushing the leader back step by step. Alira used her power carefully, conserving energy while striking when the moment was right. Finally, with a coordinated effort, they cornered the traitor leader on a narrow bridge. He swung his black crystal sword, but Daniel parried and pushed him toward the edge. Alira focused her energy, sending a controlled blast that disarmed him. The leader fell, defeated, his army scattering behind him as morale broke. The city erupted in cheers. The loyalists rushed forward, reclaiming the streets, helping the wounded, and securing the palace ruins. Daniel and Alira stood together, watching the victory unfold. Exhausted but unbroken, Daniel turned to her. "It's over. The traitors are defeated." Alira smiled faintly, her glow softening. "For now. But this victory is more than defeating them. It is proof that unity can overcome betrayal. Our alliance is stronger because we stood together." Daniel nodded. He realized that this moment, this fight, had changed everything. He was no longer only a soldier. He was part of a bond that could shape the future of both worlds. As the sun rose higher, Alira and Daniel walked through the streets with their people, comforting the wounded, ensuring order, and restoring hope. The city was damaged, but its spirit remained unbroken. Later, in a quiet courtyard, away from the bustle, Alira turned to Daniel. "You have proven yourself not only as a warrior, but as someone I can trust, not because of destiny or visions, but because of your courage, your loyalty, and your heart." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest. "I could not have done it without you. You were always at my side, guiding, protecting, and fighting alongside me." She reached for his hand. "Together we faced shadows of the past and survived. together, we will rebuild what was broken and protect what is ours." Daniel looked into her eyes, seeing strength, wisdom, and hope reflected there. "Then we face everything together, no matter the danger, no matter the enemy." Alira's markings shimmered brighter, and she smiled fully for the first time in days. "Yes, together." From the high towers, the city looked peaceful again. The fires extinguished, the streets slowly coming back to life. Humanity and Valari had stood together against betrayal and war. Their bond had been tested, and it had endured stronger than ever. Daniel knew that this was only the beginning of the challenges to come. But he also knew that as long as he and Alira stood together, they could face anything. They were no longer separate worlds. They were a single force, united by trust, courage, and the promise of a future built together. As the sun fully rose over the city, painting the streets with golden light, Daniel and Alira stood side by side, ready to lead their people forward. For the first time, the war behind them felt like a lesson, and the road ahead full of hope. The final stand had ended. The alliance had survived, and the bond between a human soldier and an alien princess had proven stronger than any shadow or betrayal.